Are you gonna keep your socks on?
For a bath? No, I'm gonna fucking take my socks off.
I'm gonna keep mine on. I'm scared of
Ooh.
intimacy.
Ooh, she a freak. She a unavailable freak. Let me just get some suds in there, get some bubbles popping, hot water.
Yeah, how do you feel about Epsom salts?
I'm a big fan. The saltier the better. Burkhardt, York, everybody. Hello and welcome to the liberal bubble.
Pop, pop, pop. He is doing a peace sign over FaceTime right now.
It is
it was a
supposed to
prolonged
indicate
one.
two.
Oh.
Well, it was supposed to indicate two.
I forgot.
So we're here in our first episode, working it out, twerking it out, trying to figure out how things work remotely.
Yeah.
And we worked out a system wherein I indicate a number which corresponds to a sound effect, and Glow immediately thought I was just saying peace out.
It looked funny to me.
Yeah, because I wanted a cheer. And I couldn't think of a more fitting note on which to begin with. This beautiful podcast. My name is Sky Doge. I am one of your hosts. I am joined by my lovely, talented, beautiful, incomparable Lady Gleep.
Hello, that is me. Should I?
You can do whatever you want. You have the soundboard in your jurisdiction, so
I'm gonna still throw up the peace sign.
Honestly, deuces.
Deuces.
But you know. Did it go?
Yeah, did you not hear it?
No. There we go. All right.
That's
so we're going to have a little work to do with these here sound effects, but that's okay.
We're cooking with gas.
And learning is central to what we're doing here on this program.
Tons of learning will be happening here today and every day that you listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive right into that. But before we do, we want to thank some friends of the pod.
Oh, we would love to thank some friends of the pod. If you listened to the first minute of this podcast.
And I hope you did, because otherwise, how did you get here?
Yeah, our lovely friend of the pod, Deegan Reeves, made our intro for us in probably the fastest time I'd ever seen. Thank you so much, Deegan. You could find him on Spotify at Deegan. He has a bunch of bops and lovely tunes you can listen to.
Do me a favor and spell Deegan for me.
Deegan. He's on Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud. I know he's on TikTok. He's on it all. YouTube. He's extremely talented. And
you know what else he's on? The Ball. Because he created this beautiful
theme song. Completely on the ball.
On a moment's notice. So thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah, and our second shout out goes to the lovely Senorita Chiquita, Miss Celia. She is 110% responsible for our lovely art, which is Mr. Sky Doge and I in the bathtub. The one that is bubbling away. That
I mean, for the listener, I will say that the initial inception of this concept was me sitting in a full suit and tie in a bathtub.
Mm-hmm. We've actually had this idea for so long.
It's been percolating for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think I just have a lot to say, and my skin would get very pruny in a bathtub. Yeah. So I decided to podcast on dry land.
It's a metaphorical tub.
I think it's a metaphorical bubble.
Ooh.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing.
Are we in the bubble? Is it kind of like a Horton Hears a Who thing? We're in the
bubble because we're liberals.
Okay, cool.
But we're also interested in venturing outside of the bubble.
Yeah.
And also thinking critically about what's happening within the bubble.
I agree.
So it was important. It was really important that I disclose out front the fact that we're both liberals as we discuss matters related to politics, because there is a worrying fusion of opinion and news nowadays. And I also, in my dynamic with friends, have been asked a lot of questions about politics by my lovely co-hosts, amongst others. And the idea that I was a source of news for anyone is I found deeply distressing, because all I knew were other people's opinions, and my opinions got their opinions. And in that way, I don't believe I've ever had an original thought. But that's a discussion for another day. And so here we are, inside the liberal bubble.
Welcome.
And I'm so happy you could join me.
Very Mr. Rogers. It's a
Why?
beautiful
Because I'm
day
wearing
in
a
this
sweater?
bubble. A beautiful day.
Are
in
you
this
calling out
bubble.
my fake niceness? Is that what's happening here? You're
No,
saying
it's
you're being nice, and that's not real.
no. Why are you assuming that I'm insinuating that? I
don't
think
know,
you're
I'm just
very
trying to
nice.
antagonize you.
Please be nice to me.
Well, you're the one that just accused me of not being nice. None of this is relevant. We're pressing forward. It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I have on my Mr. Rogers sweater. That is a lie. I'm wearing a white t-shirt. And we're here as an introduction. We want to talk about media, political media. Our goal is to provide information to young voters, new voters, voters that are confused about the way government works. And we want to have open discussions about things that are going on in the news, ask questions about things we don't understand, and demonstrate how we figure it out. And in so doing, provide information to people that empowers them to participate in the political process. Because so many people feel like they don't know enough to vote, but you do.
I would say not even just enough to vote, but enough to understand what's going on just day to day.
It is difficult. Everything is coded in so much political jargon. And like even on the news where they're supposed to explain these things to you, they really do breeze right over them, because I don't know if they assume the audience doesn't care or won't get it, or that it doesn't matter, but like they elide a lot of the very specific ways in which government works. And if you don't know how government works, you can't really think about how well it's working.
Yeah. I think my level of understanding of politics currently is maybe a freshman civics class.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
I remember one of the things that I got 100 on in that class was I did label all 50 states correctly. And that was something I was really proud of.
That I also had to do that at some point and found it quite a challenge.
I think
that and memorizing the presidents, I was like,
that I cannot do. I actually know that Joe Biden is actually the 45th president, because one of the presidents they counted twice, but he is a singular person, so technically the number's wrong. That's something I know.
Yeah, so Grover Cleveland served 2 non-consecutive terms. He served once, he lost re-election, and then he came back and won a second term. So he got counted twice. Good old Grover Cleveland.
There's like some things I know. I wouldn't say I've ever been comfortable sharing my political beliefs outside of a conversation with my friends, because I feel like putting yourself out there politically opens up dialogue, and I've never felt confident enough to have like a debated dialogue with someone where they try to prove me wrong or something. And I feel like a lot of political talk is usually trying to prove someone else wrong, and that is something that makes me really scared and uncomfortable. So,
I totally get that.
So I've definitely averted any political conversation, and I think because I've done that for so long, I also never learned much about politics. But But as I've become friends with you and as you dove into politics and learned a lot about it, it definitely grabbed my attention. And because of that, I learned probably the most I'd ever learned about politics and what was happening in our government. And I wouldn't say right now I am at the peak of that. I would say I think I'm at definitely like a lower intake of politics than I have been in a while, or an
But I
understanding.
think it's fair to say that like when it was at its peak, it was because chaos was at its peak.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's like
true.
you have to look at the car wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And like so I definitely relate to the sense of like pulling away now that things feel a little bit calmer. Um and I'm also very glad that you mentioned the dynamic of debate because like I think the dynamic of debate pervades political conversation and is entirely not helpful.
Yeah, it's not
Because, as
helpful.
you
It's
mentioned,
scary.
it's like trying to prove the other person wrong by scoring points on them and making them look stupid. And it's not an exchange of ideas as much as it is an
Yeah.
exchange of talking
Like, you
points.
don't need to make me feel stupid because I know there's things that I don't know. Like, of course,
And there,
there's things everyone doesn't know. So there's no need to insinuate that I am less than because I might not know what fact you know, or like
right, like
something I said could be
politics,
wrong.
talking about politics should not be an exercise in intellectually flexing all the time. Like, I don't believe in a persuasion model of politics. That's not a thesis I've come up with. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that it's really easy to convince people to change their mind about politics. And so I approach discussions of politics with the word discourse in mind. So,
Yeah.
like, you have your opinion, I have mine. I would like to hear about your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What you think, why you think what you think, how you arrive there. I may agree with you vehemently, but I'm in seeking out your opinion, I can gain greater insight into different opinions and then reflect more on my own. And I enter knowing that I'm going to leave having changed nobody's mind. And I'm very
Yeah.
comfortable with that.
Yeah. I like
Uh,
that. I think that's why it's easy to talk to you because I understand. I've never once been like, I was being judged for any beliefs that I had, but I also had very little beliefs. I just knew I knew I stood for things in my heart, but not necessarily what I didn't know what they translated to in political terms, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. There's like some political science research which indicates the largest group of voters, about 42% of voters, according to this study by Philip Converse, behave as what he calls ideologues by proxies,
Mhm.
which I think is a bit of a misnomer. It's like you vote in association with the social groups that you are related with, sympathize with, and the values that are included in that identity, uh, as opposed to like a pure ideological, like, I'm a libertarian and so I function solely on the like principles of libertarianism as outlined by philosopher Robert Nozick, for example. It's like very few American voters behave with that specificity in such a narrow view. Um, you're definitely not alone in behaving and thinking that way. But where do you tend to get your information about politics when you get it? What are your favorite sources?
I was just gonna say, like, the reason we're starting this podcast, or I'm your co-host rather, is because I feel like trying to find information in the normal way, quote unquote, is definitely really complicated. And I've always gone to you to kind of understand things that I've heard or saw. But I also only digest news, or I had for a really long time, and like political satire. I love Stephen Colbert. I love Seth Meyers. I love John Oliver. And of course, I would say John Oliver out of those three definitely has more information.
Definitely.
I would
It's
say,
weird, like how uh, comedy and like political satire has become a shockingly effective way of conveying news, almost better than the news itself,
Yeah.
particularly cable networks
I've
like CNN and the
I've
like.
never watched. I think the only time I've ever watched PBS NewsHour is at your house, and
Yeah, and that's like
I've enjoyed
Judy
myself.
Woodruff. Judy
Judy
Woodruff.
Judy
That's my
looking
girl.
good. Judy looking
Judy,
way too good, honestly, for the news.
class, elegant,
Mm,
just
mm.
brilliant. The Walter Cronkite of my generation.
She's got first lady energy.
100%.
Who's
Yeah.
she married to?
A very lucky man. I have no idea who he is.
Very lucky man. And if whoever's listening right now does not know who Judy is on the PBS NewsHour, do a little Googling. And
I'll tell you what.
Get a little screenshot
now that we're
going
talking about it,
and warm up your bath. Because it's a beautiful woman.
I stand Judy Woodruff. I am very sad whenever she is on vacation from the PBS NewsHour.
Yeah.
And I will take a moment to shout out the PBS NewsHour, which is my favorite news program that is, of the daily, nightly news variety.
Mm-hmm.
I find that its presentation of news is even-handed and cool. It is not a bunch of pundits talking about the same thing for an hour. Diverse stories, stuff from around the globe, talked about in a professional way.
Yeah.
When there's opinion, they're clearly denoted as, this is our opinion section that happens on Friday. And here they are.
Yeah, I think what's nice about PBS NewsHour is that it never decided they needed a 24-hour cycle. They're like, yeah, just once a day for an hour is still good enough.
Well, that's because they're publicly funded. They don't have to do ads in the traditional way of cable news. When you tune into the PBS NewsHour, they have a few sponsorship things at the beginning, and then it's just an hour straight of news.
Yeah.
And it's really refreshing to not have to watch a ton of commercials and be baited, coming up after the break, news. And it's like, why don't you just tell me the news?
Yeah. I know.
And the best thing about the PBS NewsHour is that it is available to everyone via YouTube. If you go to YouTube, look up PBS NewsHour, you can watch full episodes. They stream them live. You can watch them backlogged. So it's like a great way that you can get access to balanced information free of charge.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I've definitely seen CNN. I know who Rachel Maddow is, and
well, she's on MSNBC. But.
Yeah, and I know who Wolf Blitzer is and Anderson Cooper and
Wolf Blitzer.
We love you. We love you, Wolf Blitzer.
A Chelsea Peretti song.
Yeah, please don't copyright
Beautiful.
us, Queen.
No, don't do that, please.
But I every time I've ever watched the news, two things about the news. When I watch it, it's overwhelming. Second, it's so complicated since it is a 24-hour news cycle that I feel like I'm not, they're just trying to get me to watch. I'm not actually digesting anything.
There's very little to digest most of the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never liked watching the news. I like hearing about the news from someone else who watched it. I love that. That's why I like satire. I love the late night talk show where Stephen Colbert or Seth Meyers like, this is what happened today, and I'm gonna make you laugh while I tell you about it.
Well, that's the thing. It gets put through a filter, which is it's like what happened, but make it funny. Yeah. And it's not to say what they're saying is inaccurate, but it's also very different than hard news.
100%.
It is much closer to opinion, journalism, if you were to call it journalism at all.
Yeah.
And it's great stuff. I started out on that. Growing up, I used to watch The Daily Show and The Colbert Report every night. And there's nothing wrong with that as a starting place because it's engaging and funny. And they do a pretty good job at explaining the topics at hand. Yeah. At least enough to make their own jokes with.
I think so too, because I think in a way I get FOMO when I'm not caught up with what's going on, because then I don't get the jokes. So there's a part of me now that after watching for so long, I've gone that next level of kind of digesting the news straight up, but not completely, which is The Circus on Showtime, which
The Circus. Yeah.
which is a political show that it follows Alex Wagner,
John Heilman, and Mark. Last name, I don't know. McKinnon.
Oh, McKinnon. And then there's that woman who worked for Obama and the Clintons. She's been
Jen
on
Palmieri.
Yeah, and that
I don't know.
She's been
she
on
worked for the Obama.
Oh, she didn't. Sorry.
I don't know.
Don't fact check.
I know she worked on the Clinton campaign. Mm-hmm. I don't know if she was in the Obama.
Okay, then the Clinton. I might just be remembering that wrong, but I would say that's.
I might too.
Yeah, that's the next level of that I've moved up to, which is it follows the week of what has happened politically, and it's but they're also right there. They're right there.
The Circus it's a remarkable program because they shoot throughout the week, Monday to Friday. I assume they edit on Saturday, and they release their episode Sunday. So it's a documentary of politics in real time, and they began at the outset of the 2016 the Republican primaries. So you get to see the beginning of Trump all the way to his ascendance to the Oval Office, his entire presidency, the end of that, and they've continued into the Biden administration.
It's a crazy show.
It's like watching even if you go backwards, you're watching the news in real time. You're watching the story unfold as we understood it then. Mm-hmm. So if we went back and watched season 2, which is all about the Mueller investigation, it'd be very strange and feel very sensationalistic. But that's where all of our heads were as everything unfolded, which things was unfolding constantly because everything was coming apart at the seams during that administration. But it's just such a fascinating historical document to me for that reason.
While they were on the campaign trail on The Circus, they'd be talking to Cory Booker, they'd be talking to Amy Klobuchar, and I'm like, or they'd be
access.
Yeah, or they'd be talking to Elizabeth Warren, and I'd look over to Mr. Doge and I'd be like, how are they this close? What is this access? I'm so confused. It's like watching behind the scenes, basically. Which it feels like to me
something else.
Yeah, it definitely got me more intrigued because I was like, oh, this is a little more than the news. This is the drama of it all. The most recent season opened up with the insurrection.
Yes, the January 6th Capitol insurrection.
And John was just standing in the crowd, literally there.
Poor guy getting assigned to that event. It's wild to see something like that unfold on the news, as I did, and I'm sure a lot of us did. But then to have to then revisit it at the end of the week and see it again in the moment.
Yeah, from the insider perspective.
Right, and a perspective which we've come to know and trust over many seasons. It's a very different, more visceral experience, and it's also just well produced and well edited. Feels very polished. I don't know if we mentioned that it is a Showtime program, but it is on Showtime, so fortunately I got to sell out some cash to see it, but it is a good time.
If you have Spotify, if you pay for Spotify, it comes with a Showtime subscription. If you go on Spotify.com and /activate, you could activate a free Spotify. I mean, a free Showtime and a free Hulu account. So it is an accessible show if you do have Spotify. That's how I have my Showtime and my Hulu, and I very much use all three of those accounts.
That's how I have Flow Showtime as well. And The Circus is definitely one of my favorite shows. Last week tonight on HBO, if you want to incorporate another extremely expensive streaming service, that's a great one.
Mm-hmm. I use yours.
There you go. Trading.
Insider trading.
Nope, that is not what we're doing.
The conspiracies. I'm
Uh,
starting them.
oh goodness, not a conspiracy.
But now level 3. So level 1 is that satire, political comedy. 2 is the circus, and now I'd say 3 is this podcast.
All right, happy to be level 3. 3 is a great number.
3 is an excellent
Babe
number.
Ruth.
do you wanna talk about kind of our spiel, our log line? Tell the listeners why we're here, what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think we mentioned a little bit of it up at the top, but like we want to talk about current issues and break them down so that like they are understandable to young people, to people who otherwise don't have time or interest in politics, but want to know like just basically what's going on. And we're a wonderful duo because I am kind of a compulsive news watcher, and you care about politics, but are vexed by it. And that is a totally reasonable thing to be. Our system of governance is very confusing. I spent the week researching budget reconciliation. Not sexy.
At all.
Very complicated. But those things are like, I don't want to say essential, but they're important. And I, more than anything, want people to have an increased feeling of internal political efficacy, that they have the information, the tools, and the resources they need to make informed decisions in the voting booth, because then they are far more likely to go to the voting booth. And more political participation is better, because fact of the matter is this: Gen Z, very large generation. We're aging into the electorate. Millennials currently compose the largest voting bloc, and they are far more liberal than the generations which preceded them. And they show no signs of en masse becoming more conservative, like the generations which preceded them, because the millennials had the unique misfortune of being screwed by capitalism twice. Once as they graduated college in the 2008 economic crisis, and again now in this COVID pandemic during their peak earning years. So the sentiments among the millennial generation are not moving right as they age. And we have a whole new demographic, our demographic, Gen Z, which we are on the cusp of, aging into the electorate. And if we turned out in numbers comparable to our boomer counterparts, the government would be incredibly responsive to us because it would be our government. And that's my dream. That's what I want.
Yeah. And I think I definitely am going to be more of a person who maybe the viewer can relate to more. I don't really know a lot, but I'm not intimidated by my lack of knowledge for what's going on, and I'm curious and I want to ask questions. So
that's it.
If
curiosity,
yeah.
Curiosity is essential. I am convinced that intelligence is nothing but a nurtured curiosity. Just like when you're curious about something, you seek out the answers,
100%.
and then over time, you develop expertise.
I think the things that I know the most about were also the things I was most curious about.
For sure, absolutely.
So I'm really excited to be a part of this podcast. And for any viewers who are listening and also have questions for the Doge, feel free to contact me.
Or me.
Or the Doge himself.
I'm reachable on Twitter and Facebook at SkyDogeBubble, SkyDoge Bubble. And you can email me at skydogebubble@gmail.com if you're feeling like you need to email me.
If there's things you want to ask us about for future episodes.
Topics you want discussed, absolutely. Send it our way. We're always interested in listener feedback. We love you, listeners. We just want to make you happy.
Yeah. I definitely understand what it's like to not be able to understand the jargon, and I think having a safe place for someone to break it down to you and not feel like an idiot for not understanding what's going on is really cool. And it's definitely something I wanted to exist for a long time, hence why I pushed you for so long to make something like this. So I'm excited for it to be coming into fruition and for more future episodes, and also for me to learn so much more about what's happening, and maybe it will influence the way I understand politics, but also interact with it.
Yeah, like my hope is that in providing the information I provide here, uh, what always distressed me about the idea of me being someone's source of news is that I was just telling other people what to think, and I don't trust my own thoughts as like the most informed. Like I'm not an oracle.
Yeah.
But
I mean, no, I mean, there, I was going to say no one is, but I can't truly say that no one is.
yeah, I don't know if people are oracles, but I do know that, like, as I've talked with you about politics and you've gotten more involved, you have developed an ability to think for yourself on these matters, to develop opinions that are different than mine, or which, you know, like when I started getting interested in politics, I did not fully understand the picture. And so a lot of my opinions were like half baked, and I believed them with every fiber of my being, full conviction. And those opinions have changed. Opinions change when there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you also coerced me into making this podcast. I'm elated, ecstatic, because I want to demonstrate the process of not knowing things and then finding things out and learning that way.
Yeah.
In a very confusing world that seems to be on fire, but which we will inherit.
Yay!
Hooray! Things are great. And with that being said, let's talk a little bit about how great things are. Returning to the topic of the Capitol insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
We had the misfortune of witnessing a armed mob invade the Capitol at the urging of the former president of the United States.
Crazy.
Did you watch this unfold live?
I did kind of unwatch it fold live, but I had no idea what was going on because I was watching it from multiple. I was watching on Twitter. I was watching on TikTok. I was watching on YouTube. I was watching. I would say those were the three that I was taking news in on. Besides the news app, I was getting random notifications also from the news app. And then I also watched the episode of The Circus this morning because I knew we were going to be talking about what was going on.
She did her homework.
I did do a little homework. What's crazy about what happened was the thing that they were trying to stop because I had no idea about the stamp thing.
Yeah.
Before I talked to you.
It was an attempt to halt an otherwise very mundane procedure that, like, Americans didn't even know Congress performed because it had never been particularly, like, relevant. So, like, on January 6th, the Electoral College votes arrive in these ornate boxes. I know about the ornate boxes because Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon spent his, like, 5 minutes just pontificating and describing the boxes, and I was like, dude, did you forget to write a script or something? Like,
are they made of wood? What are they like?
They're made of wood.
Yeah,
they're like, they have like gold embellishments or something. I'm like, dude, I don't care about the box itself. But in the box are envelopes from each state that have the electoral votes on them. The slate of electors submit their electoral votes for the candidate in accordance with whomever won their state's election. And Congress counts them. And then they say who won. There is no way for, like, Congress to change the outcome, which is what Trump was pulling for in this instance. One of the most interesting speeches of the night, because after the insurrection, Congress reconvened. They were intent on not being deterred by the mob. They were committed to returning to the work that they were there to do, regardless of what had happened that day. And Senate debate continued, and I watched that. And Mike Lee of Utah is a Republican and a strict originalist when it comes to the Constitution. He and I don't agree on many things, but he said in regards to the duties of Congress on January 6th, something like this. Our job as congressmen is to open the boxes and count the votes. That's it. We do not object to the votes. We open them and we count them, and we do nothing more. And that is the way it had always been up till this point. This time we saw a number of senators and a scary number of members from the House object to the legitimacy of these elections in particular states.
The electoral ones, or the mass population ones?
Well, the way it works is each state conducts an election. They're responsible for administering their own elections, and then whoever wins, we have a winner-take-all system in the electoral college. So you win the state of Connecticut, which I believe has, I want to say 6 electoral votes, might be 8.
Each state is in charge of the presidential vote. So each
state is responsible for administering its own election.
So you're telling me if Connecticut one day was like, no, you guys aren't voting, it would be up to them?
Well, they can't just decide not to have elections, but it is the job of each individual state to determine how those elections will happen.
Okay.
And I think the idea behind that is if you centralize the administration of elections at a federal level, then they can be tampered with in one place on one level. Whereas if you devolve that power to the states, it's much harder to corrupt the integrity of the voting system. Yeah. That didn't stop this past administration from claiming otherwise. But I'm Googling the number of Connecticut electoral college votes because I don't want to be wrong. I'm in front of I'm on a platform, so I might as well know what the hell I'm talking about. But we have 7, right in the middle of where I was. So that number is determined by the number of House representatives we have in the House of Representatives, which is determined based on population, plus 1 full senators. So,
wait, so the Electoral College is our House of Reps and our senators voting for what?
No, they are not the same people, but the number of electoral votes is equal to the number of representatives designated to a state plus 2.
So the people in the Electoral College for Connecticut, are they randomly chosen?
They're not randomly chosen. So this is what happens. When you go to the voting booth and you say, for example, in Connecticut, I'm voting for Joseph R. Biden for president. You think you're voting for Joe Biden for president, and you are, but what you're really voting for in the actuality of our system is a democratic slate of electors, of delegates, to go to the Electoral College and on behalf of the citizens of Connecticut, cast their electoral votes for Joe Biden. That's the way we do it. And they do that, I believe, on December 14th was the year that the Electoral College was the date the Electoral College formally met this year. And then Congress does their thing where they count the votes on January 6th. It is the final step in certifying the results of the election. It has been to this point a simple rubber stamp. It has never been the subject of such ire.
Yeah. What I don't understand is why did people think if they could stop this stamp that Donald Trump would remain president? I just don't understand. And is it like I'm not going to go down without a fight, we're trying every last move? Or what is the thought process behind that type of action?
I think what you just mentioned, the idea like we're not going down without playing every option is certainly part of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a New York Times report that came out recently called 77 Days, which details the behavior of Trump administration officials and other people in the conservative media atmosphere coordinating
Mm-hmm.
this event
Yeah,
in a
because
way that is very not spontaneous.
yeah,
Um,
I saw a bunch of clips of like there was a woman with a megaphone shouting into the Capitol directions on how to get to like specific places. And there was also
yeah,
a bunch of people who were at the insurrection who had been taking tours of the Capitol, and they knew a lot of things that you wouldn't know just from taking tours. S-
yeah, that was part of what had seemed so strange. And Congress has launched an inquiry into like how exactly this was allowed to happen. And people who were invading Congress have since been sought out by legal authorities. But I believe, I mean, I would direct people to the reporting of the New York Times. The article is called 77 Days. It's quite thorough and very good. But Trump didn't have a strategy because he didn't have a leg to stand on. The legal law, like the lawsuits he filed, were being dismissed. So his tactic it seems like it was just to delay as long as possible, and then to like, without having a certified winner, throw the whole country into crisis, and then have it wind up in front of the Supreme Court, where ostensibly like a loyalist Supreme Court would say, this is all confusing. Trump, you could just stay president. That didn't happen. The Supreme Court dismissed the chance to review his election concerns. They were not interested.
yeah.
And so he pressured Mike Pence to tamper with this process because he, as vice president, presides over the Senate.
And Mike Pence was like, nar fam.
No, he was people described him as the most angry they've ever seen him that day. And he did not do that. He did not uh, fall prey to Trump's authoritarian browbeating. But nevertheless, uh, he incited him up. And that will be the subject of an impeachment trial forthcoming, and we will talk about that in future episodes. But what we saw and what was so distressing to me was that the people storming the Capitol were committing crimes. They were domestic terrorists. Democratic politicians like to use the word thugs. Whatever. But what I found so shocking is that like these people are so firm in their convictions. They believe they're acting righteously because they believe they have been told again and again that this election has been stolen from them. That democracy, as we know it, which is actually was unfolding as it is supposed to in the Capitol, was in fact a gross miscarriage of democracy. And so it was shocking to see things boil over with people that was, and I'm not justifying or excusing anything that happened there, but just the fact that like, I guess I'm attempting to explain it, that like these people's mental maps, which is a concept I think about a lot. It was an early concept in public opinion from Charles Lippmann, I believe, which is it's like his idea about public opinion and polling was like, it's really dumb to just get someone to react to a headline. Like, do you approve of the Capitol insurrection or do you disapprove of it? Instead, public opinion should seek to identify how people conceptualize issues. If I
Yeah.
ask you how you feel about the war in Afghanistan, how do you think? Do you see coffins at Arlington Cemetery? Do you see numbers on a page? Do you see missiles being dropped? Do you see uh, like money being spent? Like, where does your brain go? How do you conceptualize these issues? And the
Yeah.
way that you form those opinions and those tendencies is by synthesizing everything around you, your past experience, the information presented to you, and you make decisions and navigate the world on the basis of that mental map. And that mental map may be completely fucking wrong. For
Yeah.
example, there are a group of people that believe the earth is flat. Their mental map looks very different than mine, a lot flatter.
Yeah.
But that it indicates what is called an epistemic crisis in America, and it has been brewing for a long time, the entirety of the Trump presidency. We have seen a split in reality and an inability amongst the public to agree on just the basic facts of what happened.
Yeah,
Because one half of America says Joe Biden won, and the other half says Trump had the election stolen from him by a bunch of Democrats that drink the blood of children.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
those are two different worlds we're living in. Those are two maps that, like, if you compare them side by side, it's like comparing like Westeros from Game of Thrones to the Earth. It's like, how are we going to get to the same place together? It's difficult.
I was watching the coverage or just videos from the insurrection, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, is this how the other half of America watched, like protests and the death of George Floyd and everything that kind of happened this summer, and we're looking at us like we're insane. Like, well, is there that same probably, like, we look at what happened at the Capitol, and I think that the moment for me, the picture in my brain that made me realize how crazy what happened that day is that the Confederate flag had never flown in the Capitol building before until that day. And when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, that's crazy. That's crazy. Like the Confederacy didn't even do that. But in 2021, just like that happened. How did that happen? That doesn't make sense to me.
There's definitely been in the right-wing media ecosystem an equation of what happened at the Capitol with Black Lives Matter protests over the summer. The day of the insurrection, Laura Ingraham was called into Fox News and talked about how, like, she was in Lafayette Square where President Trump tear gassed peaceful protesters to do a photo op with the Bible.
Yeah.
And, Democrats too. And, like, also there's been floated the idea that maybe the insurrection was secretly an Antifa. Like, the anti-fascist group snuck into the group of people who were supporting an authoritarian to directly advocate against their own goals would be, I suppose, the rationale.
But then I think, not that I personally think this is true or not, but I remember, like, in the summer when Wendy's was, like, on fire, or the police station in a state, I forget, like, was on fire. There was people like, oh, it's the Proud Boys. It's like people who aren't BLM actually causing the chaos. And then you look back at the insurrection and they're like, no, it's Antifa. Like, the bad parts of the things that we're doing are actually the other side making us look bad, and the rest is us actually doing really good things.
It's actually, like, we're just constantly both sides are abdicating responsibility for negative things, blaming them on the opposing people. And then, listen, it's like our national discourse has devolved to I'm rubber, you're glue, whatever you say bounces off and sticks to you. Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense, and that's why we're here. But regardless of that historic calamity which we watched, we are broadcasting from Joe Biden's America. We saw the peaceful transfer of power, albeit among thousands of National Guard troops, but it was peaceful. And there was a beautiful iguana-nation.
There was a beautiful iguana-nation. I'm so proud to live in this iguana-nation. My tail was cut off, and it is growing back.
Like an iguana, America has had its tail cut, but it will grow back.
Mm-hmm.
The restorative process that Joe Biden will put us through will heal us like an iguana can heal itself. It's just
Yeah.
such an apt metaphor that you've created.
It's so truly beautiful that I don't think any other metaphor will need to be made ever again.
No, I think metaphors are closed for good.
Yeah,
It's like we've had.
they're
If
done.
you're going to use that, similes still exist. So feel free to do a comparison using like or as, but metaphors are closed. Categories
They're
closed.
done.
Most assuredly, it was a good inauguration. Lady Gaga sang a song. J-Lo said, "Let's get loud."
Let's get loud. That's what she said.
And there was no audience to get loud. Even better.
Ella Emhoff was looking right.
Yes, there was that beautiful poem from the
Amanda
Poet Laureate. Yes, and some pretty good remarks from Joe Biden, who I'm going to tell you, you talk about opinions changing. Joe Biden was not my favorite person in the Democratic primary, and I am now a big fan of Joe Biden.
For now.
So
For now.
yeah.
For now, a
it
big
changed
fan.
once. It can change again. But we're here. He's doing an all right job. We're queer. Get used to it.
Yeah. It was funny because after I watched the inauguration, we talked and you were ready to talk about what had happened. And I was like, but what everyone was wearing? ?
Oh yeah. I didn't notice any of that.
I was like, the fashion?
So then Glove put me through a fashion review.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama looked wonderful.
Michelle Obama won.
Yeah, she didn't compete in the election, but she did win.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was her inauguration, but she sat in the crowd.
Didn't take the oath. Weird. Yeah, it was kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But here we are. Embarking on our adventure.
Do you know why the vice president doesn't give a speech at the inauguration? That felt weird to me. I was waiting for Kamala to say something, like have a moment. Like it was just.
She said the oath. That was the moment.
Yeah, but I don't know. It feels like there should be more. Like the valedictorian and the president of the class. Yeah, like
yeah.
They both get the speech at the high school graduation. So what's up with that? And plus,
they both get to speak at the convention.
Yeah, but I don't know. It just felt wrong. I'm like, this woman just made history, and I don't get to hear her speak about that at all. Like, that's so weird to me.
She did speak about it at the convention.
Yeah, I know.
And I get it. Like, I don't. To answer your question, no, I don't know why exactly the vice president doesn't speak. I would probably say it's because in most cases people don't care who the vice president is for the most part, unless it's either like a particularly good and bold choice or a particularly bad and bold choice. Otherwise, vice presidents are kind of just there, and I mean, we're watching Gleep. It depends on each administration. Each administration works out their own individual power arrangement between the president and the vice president. But a lot of the times, the vice president doesn't have the most significant role. Kamala Harris has a very significant role in this administration.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I guess
I would have.
No, go ahead.
I would have loved to hear from her, but I don't think it was. It just wasn't her day. It was Joe's day.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I thought Joe gave a great speech, Mr. Joe Robinette Biden. Forget the R.
Junior.
I'm not saying Joe R. Biden. It's Robinette. It's Robinette to me.
Junior too, which is great because there's another Joe Robinette Biden that defeated him.
Yeah, I thought his speech was really good. I really appreciated the idea that what happened isn't going to be erased. Like, we're not all, because no offense to my white 50-year-old mother, but I feel like that generation of people is like, oh, I hurt you. Let's just erase that, and like, let's forget nothing happened, and let's all smile and everything's good.
I hurt you, but I did say sorry.
Yeah, so we should be good now, right? Question mark?
Yeah, like nothing. So it never happened.
Yeah, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that we're just like not gonna be okay with what happened. We're not like, okay, well, we won, let's move to the future. Like no problem of looking like towards the past and all the awful things, because one of the first things that Joe did was have like a moment of silence for all the people who had died during coronavirus, which just was like, okay, yeah, that's really sad, the past year and how awful the past administration had acted towards everything. So it was kind of nice
Yeah.
to
There was
see.
like, go ahead, sorry.
It was really nice to see, like, okay, well, not only am I going to be your new president for the next 4 years, but I know I have to clean up a lot of the mess, and there's a lot of divide in our country, and I'm willing to take it's really big sibling energy. He's like, I saw the mess that was made that I really didn't have any part of, but I'm going to acknowledge it all the time, and I'm going to try to make it better. And then eventually
I agree.
I can do my work.
Like, watching him on Inauguration Day and the days following, there was like a solemnity and almost a somberness to his demeanor,
Yeah.
which at first was jarring because I was used to seeing Trump shouting over like a helicopter blade
Yeah.
whirring.
It was really
But
weird.
what it really is a very normal human reflection and of meeting the moment, which is a moment of immense tragedy, and which wouldn't require a happy-go-lucky Energizer Bunny president booping around the White House halls. Like, takes his job seriously, and it shows in his demeanor. And that alone was quite an adjustment to watch.
Yeah. Even
A welcomed one.
Yeah, even watching what's the speech called after the night you win the election? His like the speech he gave on like right on the day after election day.
I don't know.
It was outdoor and Kamala was there, like everyone was there, it was outside. There was drones
You're not
in the
talking about.
sky.
Are you talking about like the inauguration ball, or like did he address the
No.
nation the day after?
It was when he was like officially president elect.
Oh, you're talking about November 7th when he was when the election was called.
Yeah, when the election was called, that
Okay, the
speech.
celebration in Wilmington, Delaware. Yes. What about that speech?
I don't remember. I don't remember now.
Well, we've identified the speech we're talking about, so
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Something happened. I don't know. But I'm just excited about his tone.
Unity. Unity is the message, and that is a fascinating thing to move forward with, because there's like a whole, like, I'm just watching Washington go like crazy over what unity means.
Yeah.
And Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said very astutely, she's wonderful at her job. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, Joe Biden is interested in uniting the country around issues that are broadly popular. He did not come to Washington promising to make the Republican and Democratic Party into one party. And I was like, that's just very good. Like, yeah, that's not the goal here.
Yeah.
Unity doesn't mean we are a hive mind. Unity doesn't mean we don't pursue accountability. It means that we start to talk to each other and negotiate. And so, like, we'll talk about in a future episode Joe Biden's stimulus plan and budget reconciliation. But I was so struck watching a White House press briefing this week, and reporters said,
crazy to be talked to by the government in a way that isn't terrifying or just is a lie. Like
outright deceit, yeah.
It's just outright blatant lies.
Like, not just fighting with reporters, like actually listening to the question and then attempting to answer it. It is something to readjust to for sure.
Yeah.
But a reporter asked, like, Biden has a plan that's like $1.9 trillion. Through 10 Senate Republicans have countered with a plan that's $600 million. Where do you see middle ground in that? And like, she demurred, but like, as a viewer, I was like, I don't know, somewhere around 1.2 trillion, like somewhere in the middle of those two numbers. Like, that's
Yeah.
probably where the middle ground is. That's a pretty dumb question.
Yeah, and I don't even know how to like. I don't remember the last time I watched a press secretary briefing, and it's just weird because it's been so like 4 years, and I was so I was in high school when like there was a quote unquote normal administration where like politics was very um I don't know what the word to use is. Respected, I guess.
Yeah, it was like the temperature was cool, the decorum was
Yeah.
on the level, and I can say for sure I took it for granted because I had never seen something like the circus of the Trump administration, but it's over.
Yeah.
Uh,
And so now
we've
it's
made it.
now I definitely have to learn how to be an adult and absorb politics at the face value, because for the past few years I've been absorbing it and knowing that it wasn't necessarily truthful. And when I was absorbing it from, people or places that I had the same values or morals as, it wasn't necessarily like there was really nothing anyone can do because it was just so corrupt. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like a big sense of futility. I would say moving forward, always act as a filter, not a sponge. Think
Yeah.
critically about what is being told to you, even if it's coming from the White House press secretary, who you like very much, because her job is to do a lot of political posturing, marketing, and such for the White House, which isn't to say she's lying, but that she has an agenda. And that agenda
Oh yeah,
is
100%.
in line with uh, what the American people need.
Yeah.
At least I would say so. The White House would say so. They are putting forth good faith argument based on what they have, the data available to them. But everyone's got an agenda, and spin still exists. And I
Yeah.
guess I just want to say, just because they're not lying outright doesn't mean there
They
will not
aren't
be some obfuscation.
Yeah, I was
Um,
just gonna say that too. Just because I am Democratic and we have a Democratic president doesn't mean I'm just gonna blindly
like
believe.
autopilot.
Yeah, I'm just excited to like have a government that is kind of rooting for the same agenda that I would like to see being
And that has a
applied.
process that
Yeah.
isn't like governed by tweets and then listen, President Kennedy gave a speech saying we're going to the moon in 1960, and NASA said, "Huh? We are? We're supposed to be doing that?"
Yeah.
And they did it. But I do not think that that is the model of governance. That's the exception, not the rule. Unfortunately, that model was the rule in the Trump administration, and it was exhausting and chaotic and ineffective. And
Mhm.
say what you will about the Biden administration, they have a policy process that's producing actual policy that they
Yeah.
want to put forth.
So
Um,
not only on the liberal bubble will we be kind of updating everyone on what's currently happening, but definitely deep diving into the kind of civics of it all and kind of
yeah,
understanding
the
what's going on.
machination.
Because at least once a month, I said this on the podcast on Rigged X when Mr. Doge came on, that every month I have to you have to draw me a diagram of Congress and how it is the Senate and the House of Representatives, and that is now something that I is glued
You
in my
know it.
that is glued in my brain after maybe asking like 9 or 10 times, but here we are. I know
You
that
did it.
now. So if
You
you
made it.
even if you listen to this episode and you're like, wow, I don't know what they've been talking about, I'm so lost. I already feel like I'm incapable of ever getting to a point where
You're in the
politics.
right place if you
Yeah,
feel that way.
yeah, you're in the right place, because I mean, I could sit here and talk because I've been doing this with you for like years at this point, but I know there's definitely people who are could possibly be listening and be like, wow, I already am lost. I'm scared.
And if you feel that way, dear listener, I want you to know that you are exactly who I would like to talk to. And I hope you'll stick with us. And
Yeah.
I don't expect listeners to agree with everything that I say or that you say,
Yeah.
but that they will listen, think, do I agree with that? And then vote. Crucially, vote.
Yeah.
And that's it. Thank you so much for joining us on the first episode of The Liberal Bubble.
Thank
Like,
you.
comment, subscribe, give us a rating and a review if you're on the podcast app. It's very helpful. 5 stars only, please. Thank you. And tune in every Tuesday. We'll be releasing episodes weekly. I'm Sky Doge. You can find me at Sky Doge Bubble on Twitter, Facebook. And Lady Gleep, would you like to plug yourself?
I'm the Lady Gleep. Find me at Miss Lady Gleep on the Instagram. I hope everyone has a lovely week, and we'll talk to you next one.
See you later, alligator.
Bye.